Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Two guys on a path.
You know, I was just sitting here as we were listening to that music, the intro music. We have sat here, I think, 350 times.
Right.
We have done the intros. I think
intro.
that's how many episodes we have out there with bonus drops and everything else.
Hey, speaking of that, can we
cool
do a
stuff.
shout out to one of my favorite guys,
Absolutely.
Brian from Audio Hive?
Yeah.
We haven't done that for a while. Brian, so we record in a studio. Yeah, it's not a coffee shop. Sorry to spoiler alert. But we record in a studio, and Brian and his team. Today we got Bianca.
Awesome.
They're great, right? I mean, it's just good production value. It helps keep us kind of focused. I think if
Focused
we were
on content.
two guys in a basement with a couple of $20 mics, I'd approach it one way, but we approached it professionally, which is good.
No, we absolutely sat down. In fact, we bought the $20 mics. And,
Yeah, we did,
And
yeah.
I looked at how to plug them in, and I looked at you, and I'm like, let's find a pro. And Brian has
I'm
been
glad
here
we
from the
did.
very
Yeah. So if
Brian and Bianca
anybody
and
needs services,
Audio Hive.
Audio Hive.
That's great.
And he doesn't sponsor us. He charges us nicely. I mean, he's not killing us.
Oh, absolutely.
But we thank Bianca
No, he's helped us with the mission.
and Brian and his team. So we hope Brian gets healthy, stays healthy. So, all right. So hey, I want to jump right back in because last time we did a long intro and then I didn't get a lot of content with our guest today. We got a table for three, Glenn.
I know, it's awesome. I love Table for Threes. It's great to have Justin back.
Yeah, we
In
got
fact, I
Justin.
got a flash roll of 5, 6, 7 things written down. I know you do too.
I know,
so.
it's good. So Justin can be found at Justin underscore Kinney, Kenney, the number 0, the number 6, the number 0, the number 9. That's June 6th, his sobriety date. Author of From Rock Bottom to Redemption, just out, just released. I highly recommend the book. I do read books when authors come on, and I just love the way that Justin communicates his message. And we thought we'd pull you back into the coffee shop for one more week just to kind of unpack some of these nuggets you threw out
So
last
can I
week.
call?
Yeah,
Can I call an audible?
call an audible.
So,
what are you thinking?
So Justin, we do this thing called. I mean, we literally.
Oh,
have,
yeah, okay.
We probably have 6 or 8 things here.
I love
Can
this idea.
we
I
do
know where you're
something?
going.
Can we do something that we call rapid fire?
Yeah.
And just throw it out, right? So it's not like a 7-minute response. It's more of a gut reaction. I think these are really key bullet points. And we'd love to get your insight on that. Folks can go and read the book, which is great. They can go to your social media stuff, which is great. But I think just dig in on
I love
some of
that
these
idea.
is
All right. Can
it's
I go?
great.
Can I start?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Of
All
course
right.
you can.
All right, Justin. So, service, faith, the steps. Quite rapid question for you. What did you find was the most important thing in the AA program that you had to focus on early on? Was it more service? Was it your faith? Was it your, working with others? Tell me what the most important thing that when you came into the program that you put your energy into that you can go back now and say, yes, that was my foundation of my recovery.
Yeah, it would be faith, kind of in line with step one at admitting to God, admitting to myself that I was powerless.
That's awesome.
All right, great. So we were talking about redemption, right? And we were talking about how it's not an event but a process. And you talk about repetition builds redemption. What are some of those steps or processes that have to be repeated in order for redemption to happen? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think that's something that maybe looks a little bit different from person to person. And, for me, what that looks like is it's completely surrounded in daily discipline. I used to rely on motivation, but relying on motivation is bad advice because motivation is fleeting. If I'm disciplined, and this is something I talk to my students a lot about too, when I'm disciplined, then I can create a structure in my life to build a life I want to live, whether I'm an addict or whether I'm not. So for me, part of that discipline is just a 1% better each day mentality. It's a radical responsibility. It's discipline over emotion, daily reflection. I would say accountability of myself with mercy. Identity through behavior. Um, and I would say it's faith integrated with action. So, when I set out each day, I know that if I am undisciplined, growth will not occur. And every day I either get better or I get worse. Right? No one stays the same. So if I truly want to get 1% better today, I know these are things that I need to make sure that I'm doing. And days that I maybe am rushed and I don't get to it, I feel it. Like if I don't get my morning routine done, I will feel that throughout the day. So, in time, these non-negotiables have been the foundation for me for laying that discipline.
That's great. That's so Glenn, man. Glenn is the same way. I love that.
Yeah, no, but how do you identify those action points, right? Sometimes, when I look at myself personally, I'm very grandiose, right? I have great business plans, great action plans, right? But how do you come up with that that list of action steps that will help A, build a new life, and B, start to build towards redemption with others?
Yeah. So, it was a lot of trial and error to figure out what worked with me. And none of these things are things that I came up with on my own. When I became sober, I went all in with it. And I read as many books, listened to as many podcasts as I could. And, I just tried to be a sponge and soak up everything and then squeeze out, this is what's working for me. So, for people that are just entering sobriety, I think you have to have a period of trial and error. Have accountability, but beat yourself with a feather, not a bat. And start small. You don't have to go and meditate for 20 minutes and say, well, this is too hard, I'm not going to do it. Start with a minute. So I think it's just a lot of trial and error until you find what fits you, that works with who you are, to get you to where you want to be.
Okay, so I'm going to tear that apart a little bit. So for me, and for a lot of people I work with, right, it's hard to fix a problem with the same brain that created it, right? So when you say what works for me, right, as I evaluate that kind of lens or filter to look at things through versus being told what to do and surrendering and listening to those directives of what being told what to do. So if I do what works for me, I'm sitting there with a handle of vodka, because that works for me. And that works for me. I needed to shift the mindset, and because if I think a lot of people out there are, what I call create your own recovery program, right? Well, going to AA doesn't work for me. Doing that doesn't work for me. Not going to bars doesn't work for me. Going to church doesn't work for me. Higher power, no, that doesn't work for me. And they stay stuck in the cycle of addiction or drinking, and I think at some point, what worked for me didn't work for me, so I needed to surrender. And I remember early on, I here's what my surrender looked like. Right, I like to define words. My surrender said, I said to my counselor Matt, I'm like, Matt, look, dude, I give up. I will do anything you tell me to do. I just cannot take another drink. And so I set my ideas aside and I took the input, and literally it was a year plus I would call my sponsor because I didn't trust myself anymore, and I wanted that new set of directives, and now I call them my lighthouse. I was following a different lighthouse, right? So how do you differentiate between? What I know doesn't work for me is journaling, and what I know doesn't work for me is exercise, right? And I'm saying this jokingly. I think there's value in those, and I should probably do both of those, right? But how do you draw the line between what works for you and doesn't work for you, and then surrendering and taking new input and new, content and directives that will literally change your life?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on
And
the
I'm
head
sorry,
when
that
you
was
talk
not
about-
rapid fire.
No, you're good. So, I think early on for me, I have a amazing sponsor. His name's JT. Just an awesome guy. And early on, I did not think. I did what he told me to. And there were a
Nice.
lot of things I was told to do that I did not want to do. I did not want to meditate. Right? Meditation is something that he alone really pushed heavily onto me. I didn't want to do these things. Like, I was still attracted. I didn't have alcohol in my system, but I was still the same person with the same character defects that I had been for 10 years during my addiction. So, early on, it's almost like he was training me like I trained my dog. Like, sit, stay, go, fetch. What he said is what I did.
So how
And
did you
then-
feel? How did you feel about that? As I look back, because I did the same thing, and it's so valuable. But I literally had less accountability when I was 12 than I have today as a 60-year-old adult. So how did you feel about that, or is that where the surrender kicked in and said, "I'm just going to listen"?
Yeah, I think that's where surrender kicked in. Like, I looked at my life and I hated my life. I hated myself. I write in my book about the times when I did not care if I was going to wake up the next morning. And here was JT, who had a life that I envied. JT has a beautiful family. He's a great guy at his core, and I wanted that. So I basically surrendered. Like, all right, he obviously has it put together. He's long term, 30 plus years of sobriety. So I shut my mouth and I opened my ears and, surrendered to God, yes, but also just surrendered to my mentor with just full trust in him.
And that's awesome. Okay, sorry that we got away from the rapid fire a little bit, but no, I just had to dig in, man. That's really good. Okay,
That is awesome. On JT, he's your sponsor, and he has been, I imagine, since the beginning. Are you sponsoring guys now?
I am not sponsoring anybody.
And I was going to say, here was what I was going to say. I was going to say, you're in the middle of writing, of closing up a book, the editing, all the stuff that goes with it. You've got 6 kids. I mean, I was going to ask, if the answer was yes, I was going to ask, how possibly do you find the time?
Yeah, no, I don't mentor anybody in an AA program. As a teacher, I feel like I'm a mentor to my 250 students that I see each week. But in the realm of working the steps with somebody one-on-one as a mentor, I do not have anybody, no.
Yeah, I also see your book as being tremendous 12-step work, right? It's that's great.
Well, no, I think 12 steps can come in. I mean, 12 steps is service, right?
Right.
Hand the message off, and it's not dictated. You have to sponsor people. The only thing that I will say is, for me, I learned what I learned in AA probably 10% from me going through it, from working with others through the program, because when they go through the program, I do the steps with them again. I've learned more from that, and I think sponsorship's a privilege. I just really do, and I always, I tell you, when you're doing the right thing, you always find the time to do that. So, quick question: what do you teach?
I'm full-time strength and conditioning.
All right, fantastic. I saw one of your videos. You were working with students. Really had some motivational, just some personality. From a personality perspective instead of just a muscle perspective. So I love strengthen the mind and heart. and saw in addition to, muscle. So I thought that was great. Okay. One of the things you posted is progress is proof. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So like we talked about last episode, here I am on day 5 of sobriety, sending letters and, calling people that would pick up, making all of these amends. And, my word meant absolutely nothing because for the previous 32 years, my word proved that I was dishonest. My word proved that I was manipulative. My word proved how hurtful and damaging I was to others. So progress is something that is visible. It is something that is seen. And for me, that's what I mean when I say progress is proof. I can talk the talk all day long. I can read all the books. I can listen to all the podcasts. But if I don't put those into action to where progress is being made in my daily life, then it's all just talk. And, the people closest to us, they don't want to hear words, as you said. They want to see change. So when I see the change in myself, when the people around me see the change in me, that is progress.
Awesome. So one thing that you mentioned in the prior episode, and on your Instagram, I saw just an amazingly beautiful picture of your family, of your wife and 6 kids. 4 your own, 2 are stepkids, and the way you talk about them, they're just like your own, right? Which is really cool. But you talked about the outside versus the inside, right? Where when you were drinking, it didn't match. How does that look today? Does your outside or your Facebook, right, or your Instagram, does that match reality? And so share some insights on that.
Yeah. I would say for 10 years as an adult, I wore a mask, and my social media and who I was in public was not the real me. I was a master at being fake, and I was an Olympian manipulator. But now the person that my students see is the same person that my wife sees. The father that others see on social media is the same father that my children see. And it's just so peaceful. It's so exhausting to wear a mask. It just drains you. And to be able to now live a life of peace, knowing that I'm the same person, whether it's on social media, whether I'm at school, whether I'm with my friends, whether I'm with my children, has been a really great reward that recovery has given me.
So I love that. You used the word peace a number of times last episode and this episode. How do you define peace?
Oh, how do I define peace? I would say fully reliance on God, like accepting that His will is being done. It's something that I receive. So when we talk about I admitted I was powerless over alcohol. The root word for admit in Latin, it means to send, and then accepting is to receive. And I really think when they wrote the 12 steps, they specifically used the word admit instead of accept. So I've done the admitting part, and I've now accepted the peace that has come with it, the peace that God has given me as a result for changing every single thing about my life. And I think that peace was always there, but I was too blind. I was too selfish in order to see it. So I think peace is found in the morning cup of coffee. Peace is found in a child getting home from school and running over and giving you a hug. Peace is found in laughter around a dinner table with 8 people. Peace is all around me. And I think it's always been around me, but for such a long time, I refused to look for it, that I just wallowed in the muck, hating life.
Mm-hmm. So you were 32 when you came into the program then, right? Am I doing the math right?
Correct.
Okay. So do you find, because faith is such a drive in your recovery program, Do you find that overall 32-year-olds find faith as an obstacle to recovery? In other words, they walk into the rooms of AA and it's about faith. It's a spiritual program. How would you talk to the person who's listening right now who says, I want recovery, but you can have your religion relationships? What would you say to that person?
Yeah. So like assuming that person, is still in their active addiction, I think anything to get them first step to stop using or drinking is the key. So like, say what you have to, but we're going to stop drinking. And then, in time, I would not be where I am today if there was not a God. I would be dead. And I know that there's people who are atheists who are successful with their recovery. For me, I would struggle with that. But, I think that's why the word higher power comes up so often in recovery, is because of the importance that is. So if I was working with someone like that, I wouldn't be forceful, but I would try to lead them, towards having that relationship with God. And, I know sometimes a lot of people enter recovery and they're mad at God. That was me. I was so angry with God. But without God, I am nothing.
I love that. No, I love that. And I think back to my own experience, right? I couldn't stand God when I finally surrendered, but I knew in my heart, that God had something to do with it, right? That He was part of the solution, but I had no idea what that looked like because the God that I knew just didn't work. He was judgmental, damning, right? So I remember talking to my sponsor, Timmy G, and I'm like, hey, man, because like in how it works, right? I think 18 times higher power, he, him, God are mentioned. And I'm like, dude, this just doesn't work for me. He goes, that's okay. He goes, use me as your higher power. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I literally used him as my higher power for several years, until the whole God thing, I finally jumped in the pool and worked to figure it out. Mikey was in the pool with me and I'm with you. I mean, today it's an amazing relationship. There's no way I would have what I have today without God. God's a superpower for me today. Spirituality is a superpower. Okay, so you said something earlier. I just want to come back to. You said you're fully reliant on God's will. How do you know what God's will is?
I think God gives us His will in Scripture. So, one of my non-negotiables every day, I read a chapter out of the Bible. I attend church regularly, and my belief is like I don't go to church for me. I don't go to church to sing. It's not about what I'm doing. I go to church so that God can care for me. I go to church so I can receive His gifts. And I think He outlines His will, through the 10 Commandments, through the life of Christ. So, obviously I sin every single day. We all do. But having that as direction, I think gives a pretty good blueprint for what does God say. And, for the longest time, in my recovery, I never asked the question, what does God say? I would always, if anything, I use Scripture to excuse my drinking, right? I told myself Jesus turned water into wine, while ignoring everything God said about sobriety, self-control, discipline,
don't be drunk,
judgment. Right. Yeah, like I used one verse as permission while dismissing dozens of
awesome.
Others.
That's awesome.
I was Christian
that's
by
create
culture.
Your own program.
Yeah. I was a Christian by culture, but not conviction. So I went through the motions while living entirely for myself, and eventually I reaped exactly what I had sown: chaos, destruction, emptiness, pain. But even then, God did not abandon me. So His mercy is deeper than my rebellion, and His love is stronger than my stubbornness. And in my situation, his grace waited like the father of the prodigal son, ready to run towards me the moment I turned to him. So I try to remind myself of this truth often. And, every day, every morning when I pray, my last sentence is always, God, let your will be done, not mine. Because if my will is going to be done, we're going to go straight back to chaos and destruction. So for me, that's what reliance on God looks like. Back to your question.
Love it.
That's fantastic. And what you just painted there for me, use the prodigal son, is the God I grew up with was very judgmental, damning sinners, right? If you were genius to church, you were a backslider. We had all the fun words for everybody. But in the spirituality today, prodigal son, when the son turned around and came back home, the father didn't pull out his list of all the sins that the son did and say, okay, you spent what on what? You did what with who? You did how? You lived where? None of that. The father ran to him, just like you said, opened his arms wide and say, welcome home. Second one is, story in the Bible is the woman at the well, right? I mean, she had like 5 husbands. She was they have bad words for those kind of women, but and Jesus saw her at the well, and she was at the well at noon because that was the only safe time for her to be there because she was ostracized by everybody. And she goes, "Why are you talking to me?" And he loved on her, man. He showed her some love, and that's what I needed. That's what we need when we start to turn that from addiction to recovery. So no, it's really, really cool. Last thing I just want to touch on real quick, and I'm not doing well with the rapid fire, but you said faith integrated with action. So Mikey and I are part of a men's group, a Monday night men's group, and we have guys in there that they do the prayer and they do the hoping and they have all the faith, but they sit on the couch, right? And I just don't think that's what it's about. I think you have the faith, you have the prayer, you have the beliefs, but then you get in the pool and swim.
Right. Yep, I agree. Besides the Bible, and besides From Rock Bottom to Redemption, what's on your reading list? Recommended reading list for people to early recovery and even post recovery. What's your favorite things?
Yeah, so I'm a huge Ryan Holiday fan, and I know that he does not write his books specifically for recovery, but for me, Stoicism played a key role in my recovery, and everything I know about the Stoics I learned from Ryan Holiday. So he's got daily devotional books out. He has 4 books: The Courage of Wisdom, Discipline and Destiny. But all of his books are just so helpful to recovery. And, the stuff that he mentions has become corner posts and foundations for me in my recovery that I learned from him. So, I mean, if I was talking to somebody in early recovery, it doesn't matter which Ryan Holiday book, pick one. And then there's an author called Chad Bird, and I won't go into much about his story as it's not mine to tell, but he has a book called Night Driving. And if you've not read Night Driving by Chad Bird, you're really missing out. So especially people in recovery.
Okay, we'll
so
put
those two authors are the biggest.
Yeah, we'll put links in the back in the resource room. So let's close up by 2 things. Number one, I want you first to tell people how they can get to your book, how they can get to you, how they can get to the book. And then while you're talking, I want you to be thinking about this. I want you to be thinking of the one piece of advice for the guy who's sitting on the fence saying, maybe I jump into this recovery, sobriety thing, maybe I don't. So first of all, how do people get a copy of your book, From Rock Bottom to Redemption?
So it's going to be available on Amazon and in bookstores. I'm not, I know we're recording this ahead of time, so I'm not sure exactly which bookstores it will be in, but it will be available on Amazon. And then at the beginning, I thank you for sharing my Instagram, but I just wanted to clarify. I think you said KENNEY.
Yes.
So
it's KI.
That's right. It's Justin _ Kinney, KINNEY _0609.
That's awesome. All right, now give the listener who's pondering, first of all, give the listener who's pondering sobriety, sober curious, give them a piece of advice.
You just have to start. You know, you don't need to start journaling 5 pages. You don't need to go run 5 miles. You don't need to meditate for 20 minutes. You just have to start. It starts with one small decision at a time. And I think in my experience, I was so afraid to start for such a long time that fear kept me from being sober earlier. So whatever it is, just start today. You know, start one thing, write one sentence, meditate 1 minute, make one phone call asking for help, go to one meeting, just start.
That's awesome.
I love that. Justin, love our time together.
Really enjoyed
love
you
the
coming in the
book.
coffee shop with us.
You keep in touch with us and give us some updates, but we'll put all this data in the resource room. Justin, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Great connecting. See you, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.